Hello and welcome back to Democracy, everybody. Welcome back to Helldivers 2, where today we're going to be going over all of the secondary weapons, and we're going to be ranking them against each of the factions. Now, every weapon is going to be getting a ranking between the S tier being the absolute best, and the C tier being okay. I don't think that there's any, really terrible ones here. Yes, if you were doing, secondary only against certain factions, it might actually be pretty bad, but generally people aren't going to be doing that unless you're going for, the achievement, but then you probably already have a plan on what you're doing. You're probably going to be taking a primary or a special weapon that also complements this secondary weapon. So that's why I'm not going to be putting any of these lower than C tier. I think C tier is kind of the lowest of these weapons, are just fine against them. They're maybe not the greatest, but they're okay. As well as this is all completely my own opinion, and if you disagree with it, awesome. I hope that you do, and I hope that you find whatever you like using the most and be sure to use that. Don't listen to anybody else if you find something that you really enjoy. And with that out of the way, let's start out with the P2 Peacemaker. This is the very starting pistol in Helldivers 2. And this one has gotten buffed a couple of times. This one used to be probably the worst secondary weapon in the game, and it's still not really one of the best ones, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. When it first came out, it was the same damage, pretty much the same everything as a starting submachine gun. It's just the submachine gun held more bullets and had full auto, so that just kind of made it better. It even held more overall bullets too, so it was just better than it, although the submachine gun was arguably the best starting weapon, at least when Helldivers 2 first came out. The P2 Peacemaker has light armor pen and does 85 damage a shot, which is pretty good, holds 15 rounds. You can spam this one out pretty quick. It has 8 spare mags in total with it. That is decent. This is pretty much like the standard starting pistol that you would kind of expect it to be. It has nothing really flashy about it. It doesn't really do anything amazing, but it doesn't do anything terribly. It's okay at everything. And for that, I'm going to have to give this one a C tier versus all of the factions. Versus bugs, this one is fine because you can put down all the small bugs with just one shot. That's very nice. You can also headshot some of them. Not necessarily medium bugs, but the smaller bugs you can also one-shot headshot. The medium bugs you can take out with a couple headshots or just kind of spam into a body. It's not bad to be running backwards and kind of spamming this out. So that's okay. Against bots, kind of the same thing. You can kill medium bots with this if you hit them in the head, but it's not necessarily the best for doing that. Same thing sort of goes with squids. You can one-shot headshot the voteless, which is cool, and you can even kill the overseers with this if you spam at them enough, but it's not really that great either. So I think C tier is fair for the Peacemaker. It's not a bad pistol by any means, and every time I've gotten it, whenever I've done random loadouts, I've been okay with it. It's never been a secondary that I was super looking forward to, but it's never been a secondary that I absolutely hated either, so C tier seems fair. Up next we have the P19 Redeemer. This is the submachine gun, and this one is substantially better than the pistol. This one used to be the best secondary in the game for quite a long time, mostly because it was really only competing with the pistol, the dagger, and the big iron, the Senator, and that was before the Senator got its buffs. So this one was pretty much the best weapon because it was pretty much the starting assault rifle, the Liberator, but it was in a secondary slot. You just had less bullets overall for it, which was still really good, and it is still really good. Overall, for the rating of the P19 Redeemer, I would say this one is A tier for both bugs and squids, but B tier versus bots. That's mostly because there's just a whole lot more medium enemies, and certain armors are more of a pain to take out with the Redeemer since it only has light armor pen. This one does do 60 damage a shot, has a very high rate of fire, holds 30 plus 1 round in the magazine, which is pretty good, and you get 4 spare mags. This one really goes well with just about every loadout. It's a very good general purpose weapon. It's really good for throwing on any build when you want to spray stuff down at close range, which is generally versus the bugs and the squids. Versus bots, this isn't usually as big a deal. It can be if you're getting charged by berserkers pretty often, because this one can put down berserkers fairly fast, even though they are kind of medium armor-ish enemies. Usually they're so close that it's very easy to dump this either into their stomach or into their face, and then you can kill them pretty quick. Against bugs and bots, it's a fantastic weapon to be running away as you kind of just spray into the crowds of the smaller bugs or the smaller squids. Up next, we have the P32 Warrant. This one is the Judge Dredd pistol, and it came with the Force of Law War Bond, although it's not in the War Bond, it's just in the Superstore, so you will have to wait until the Superstore comes around in order to buy this. This one's pretty good. This one does 80 damage per shot, but it has medium armor pen on it, which is a pretty big deal. Medium armor pen is super nice for most weapons. This holds 12 plus 1 rounds in it, and this one also has an auto-targeting system that you can turn on or off. If you have it turned on, then it will target enemies, and it usually goes center of mass, although sometimes that is the head for certain enemies, like the bugs in particular. Or you can switch it off and then it fires out rounds. These rounds don't move as fast as regular bullet, they move a little bit slower, so you will potentially have to lead your shot at longer range. For the Warrant, I would say this one's probably B tier against the bugs, but A tier versus the bots and the squids. Main reason why I would say it's B tier against the bugs is sometimes it has weird targeting. It kind of always has against the bugs. For the longest time, it would not target brood commanders at all, and I'm not sure why that is. That was a strange bug. It would also target bug tunnels for some odd reason, and this couldn't close them, so that didn't help. So the targeting system wasn't really the best. Usually I swapped that off whenever I used it against the bugs, and it was still decent against the bugs, where you could still kill medium bugs and small bugs pretty quick with this gun. Against bots, this one is really good, since you can pretty easily hit the medium bots and kill them pretty fast with this, so that's a big bonus. It also kills the small ones. And then against the squids, this one is fantastic against the overseers, especially the ones that fly around. It's really easy to just have this thing auto target, and then you just kind of spam it out at them, and you should take them down pretty fast. So like the warrant is really good there. Up next, we have the P113 Verdict. This is pretty much the big old Deagle pistol, and this one is pretty awesome. This one comes in the Polar Patriots War Bond. This one has pretty much always been solid. I would say this one's a straight A tier against everything. This one does do 125 damage per shot, so it is the highest damage per shot we've talked about so far, with medium armor pen, which is really good, and holds 10 rounds in it, as well as it has 8 spare mags. So you do get a lot of bullets with this. On the bug front, you can kill all the small and medium bugs pretty fast with this one. It's not going to be the best for taking on heavy bugs, but you could do it if it's that bad you actually need it for that. On bots, it's really good against the medium bots. You can headshot them with this and take them down with one shot, so that's really cool. Even if you don't, you can spam it out pretty quickly and pretty much stun lock them thanks to this, and it reloads pretty fast too, so you can get right back into the fight. It also doesn't have very much recoil either, which is great. And then on squids, this one can kill overseers really fast too, which is very nice, as well as it can kill the voteless really quick. So like the Verdict is just solid all the way around. Up next, we have the P4 Senator. This is the big iron, the big old revolver. This one comes in the Steel Legends War Bond, and this one is really awesome. I absolutely love the Senator. For an overall rating, I would say this one's probably A tier against the bugs, and then S tier versus the bots and the squids. So this one has 200 base ballistic damage, which is really good, and it also has heavy armor pen, meaning that it can hurt just about anything that you shoot with the revolver. This can actually take down like Chargers and Titans and Hulks. It can kill Hulks actually pretty fast. It can kill Chargers and Titans relatively quick too. It's not really the best for that. You would probably want an anti-tank weapon over this, but like if you needed to just pull out the revolver and start shooting, this one can work. This holds 6 shots in it. It does reload 1 round at a time unless you empty out the entire cylinder, and then you get the speed loader, so you can reload the entire thing very quickly. That's really good. This one holds 40 rounds in total, and you do top this off whenever you go to reload it. So you don't have to worry about dropping spare mags with this one like you could with the other weapons. And I find this one pretty solid in most situations. Against the bugs, it's still very good. Even though I would say it's maybe the weakest against them, it can still like pop the heads of any of the medium bugs with like a single shot. That's really good. You can also, again, hurt the big bugs, but usually there's a whole lot more bugs, and I find that shooting out things quickly sometimes is better for the bugs in that way. For bots, you can one-shot headshot a lot of bots with this, and body tap the smaller bots, which is great. Like, the Senator's really good against them, and again, you can use this even against things like Hulks if you really wanted to. You could potentially use it against, like, a tank too, but you probably want to be hitting the weak spot, and again, you probably want anti-tank things for that, not your big iron. And then for squids, this one's fantastic too. You can take down the voteless pretty quick. Doesn't do the most towards like flesh mobs, but you can take the overseers out really fast too. And even if you need to use this against the harvesters, it does work. This one's even more forgiving than some of the other weapons, because any of the weapons with medium armor pen can also take out the harvesters. Like the Verdict's actually pretty decent for that. Same thing goes with the Warrant. Like it's not bad if you want to be aiming for like the joints of their legs. Then that's pretty good too. I do really like the Senator though. It's probably one of my favorite weapons. Also, if you hold the reload animation for this and for the Talon, your person will start spinning the revolver too, so nice little touch there. And then our very last of the pistols, even though we still have more to talk about, is the M6C SOCOM pistol that came with the Halo War Bond. And this one is basically the same as like the starting pistol, so I would say this one's like C tier across the board too. The main difference that this one has is that it does do more damage per shot with less ammo in the magazines, but the same amount of total magazines. So they basically round each other out for about the same amount of damage. This one does have a suppressor on it though, and if you do value stealth, then this one could be potentially a little bit better. I usually don't value stealth all that much. I usually don't play stealthy, so that doesn't really apply to me, and that's why I might rate this lower than some other people. It is a really cool pistol, and I do like the sound of it. This one does 100 damage per shot with light armor pen, holds 12 rounds in the magazine and 8 total mags, and you can spam it out pretty fast. DPS is pretty good from this one. I do like taking it and just running around and shooting different things with it, like the small bugs, the small squids in particular. Small bots could also be okay, but I do find it kind of awkward once the medium enemies start showing up. That this one just isn't really as hard hitting as some of the other ones. So I haven't been using it a whole bunch ever since it came out, but when I have used it, I've thought that it's fine. Up next, we have all of the melee weapons, and our first melee weapon is the CQC19 Stun Lance. This one was the very first melee weapon that was added to the game, and honestly, it's been probably one of the best melee weapons that they've had in this game. So melee is kind of a hard sell for most people anyway. Most people don't want to be getting that close, and you could also make the argument that melee is not always the best choice. But if you kind of wanted that, then like we'd only be talking about one or two weapons. For secondary weapons, it'd probably be like grenade pistol or ultimatum for just like very specific jobs, and that's the only thing you're using your secondary for. And that wouldn't really be all that fun of a video to make. Plus, that isn't really necessary in Helldivers. Even on the most difficult missions, like, you can still have a lot of fun and just take like silly builds overall, and they usually work pretty well. The Stun Lance, for an overall rating, I would say this one's A tier against the bugs, C tier against the bots, and then B tier against the squids. This one's kind of all over the place, because against bugs, this one's actually pretty solid, especially if you want to take it with like the ballistic shield and you just stab stuff. So long as things don't get around you, you can kill them all pretty fast. This does have a stun on it too, and it does do pretty high damage at 110. Also, all the melee weapons do have medium armor pen, even though they say they have light armor pen. That's not true. The melee stats in-game are not correct. I would really wish that Arrowhead would rework that so you could actually see the full stats for, well, really everything in the game, but especially melee weapons. This does have the longest reach out of any of the melee weapons too, which is fantastic, and you can usually corral the bugs pretty easily with this, especially small hordes. That way you don't have to be using up like your bullets if you don't want to. Against bots, melee is just a hard sell in general because it's really difficult to get within melee range and actually make any sort of good use of it. Most of the time the bots will stay at a distance and try to hit you. The spear does at least have the stun on it and longer reach, so it's okay at fighting berserkers, but even then it's still not that great. And against the squids, this one is okay against the hordes of the voteless. It's not my favorite for melee weapons in terms of cutting them down, and you can bully overseers with this, which is nice, but you can bully overseers with any of the melee weapons, so I don't know if that's a huge bonus. Our next melee weapon is the CQC2 Saber. This one is pretty awesome. This one came in the Masters of Ceremony War Bond, and it does look really cool. I really like the Saber. It's probably my favorite looking melee weapon. Like, this thing is awesome. Does do pretty high damage per swing, does have medium armor pen, does swing pretty fast as well. It's one of the fastest swinging melee weapons in the game. For the bugs, I would say this one's probably like B tier. It's still pretty good. It's mostly good against the small bugs though. I find it a little bit awkward towards the medium bugs. C tier again against the bots because it's just kind of a hard sell against bots. And then A tier versus the squids, primarily the voteless. Like, this one can just hack down crowds of voteless super fast. It cuts through them really quickly. It's not uncommon for you to be cutting through like 2 or 3 of them with a single swing. And that makes it so you can cut down their horde numbers pretty quickly, which is fantastic. It also, once again, kind of bullies the overseers. Up next, we have the CQC30 Stun Baton. This one you're going to have to buy from the superstore. You can't actually get it from a war bond, which is kind of better and kind of worse in a way. Depends on how you want to look at it. This one does the least amount of damage out of any of the melee weapons. Kind of makes sense that the baton would, compared to like an axe or a sword. Does less damage per hit, but it pretty much does have guaranteed stuns on it, which does make it actually really good in certain situations, particularly against bugs, I find. So for an overall rating for the stun baton, I would say this is A tier versus bugs, C tier versus bots, and B tier versus squids. Against squids, this one is still fine. You can still bully like the voteless, and you can kind of stun like flesh mobs, and you can kind of stun the overseers if they do end up getting too close to you. That's going to be the biggest deal with like the flesh mobs, but if they're kind of enraged, then this one doesn't really help all that much. Against the bots, again, this one's just kind of awkward. You don't really want to be trying to melee fight bots. It's just not really a winning combination most of the time. And then against the bugs, this one is actually very useful, because if things do get right on top of you, you can kind of just swing this one around, and usually you're okay with stunning them and then just running away or repositioning. Sometimes it can kind of body block the other bugs from hitting you too, which is nice. And this one has saved me quite a few times whenever there's been like stalkers in the area, and you just pull this thing out and then just like smack them once. Usually they might hit you and fling you, but then they're kind of stuck there, and you just swap to your primary weapon and mow them down really fast. So like the stun baton shouldn't really be underestimated, at least against the bugs. Then we have the CQC5 Hatchet. This one's pretty cool. You have to buy this one as well. This one doesn't come in a war bond. This one, for an overall rating, I would say is B tier against the bugs, C tier against the bots, and B tier versus the squids. The axe I find very similar to like the Saber. The Saber does attack faster than the axe, and I think it has a better attack pattern than the axe, but the axe does still feel pretty good. Against bugs, it's decent at fighting basically everything, very similar to like the Saber. Against bots, once again, it's very awkward to try to recommend this towards bots. And versus the squids, this one does work pretty well against the voteless, just not quite as good as like the Saber does. And that's the primary thing that I'm comparing this to, because usually those two fight very similar to one another, and I do just kind of end up liking the sword a little bit more than the axe, but the axe is pretty cool too. Then we have our newest melee weapon, which is the CQC42 Machete, which this one is also kind of similar to the Saber. It does do more damage than the Saber. I was under the impression that these did the same amount of damage and had about the same attack patterns. The Machete does swing slower though, and it does do more damage. For an overall rating, I would pretty much give this one the same that I did with the axe though. It feels very similar to the axe for me. This one is probably B tier versus bugs, C tier versus bots, and B tier versus squids. It's still okay for chopping through the hordes of voteless, it's still okay for hacking down the smaller bots if you do end up getting that close to them, and it's still pretty good against the medium and the small bugs, but with the slower swing speed, I do find it a little bit more awkward. Not too much, because most of the time when I'm taking these, I usually have the riot shield too, so even if my swing is a little bit slower, most of the time the shield just blocks it. I just noticed the attack speed more frequently with like the sword, since it seems to come out so much faster than so many of the other weapons. And now we move on to the special secondary weapons, where first up we have the P11 Stim Pistol. This one, I don't really think I can give it a rating though, because this one is totally dependent on if you're playing in solo or if you're playing in multiplayer. In solo, the Stim Pistol is worthless because it doesn't really do anything. You don't have anything to target with the stims. This doesn't hurt enemies if you shoot them either. In multiplayer, though, this one can be really good depending on your team comp and how your team likes to play. So the Stim Pistol comes in the Chemical Agents Warbond, and this one basically acts as smaller stim darts that you can shoot at people. This one holds 6 rounds, and you can actually shoot it fairly fast. You also reload this one syringe at a time, but you do reload the entire thing at once if you've emptied out all of your syringes, very similar to the Senator. So that's pretty cool. The syringes also have travel time on them, and they don't move super fast, so if you're trying to hit people at a distance with this, good luck with that. You're going to have to lead your shots a decent amount to stick them with it. It can be really useful though, because this isn't as powerful as a regular syringe that you would give yourself, but it is still really good. And you can actually get more healing from this than probably most people, unless maybe they're wearing medic armor. So you can get a whole lot of value from the Stim Pistol. It is really good in that role. It's just that this one is very heavily based on the team that you're playing with, how you guys are playing, and even like what mission and what equipment everybody's bringing. Because if basically nobody's getting hurt, or if as soon as everybody's getting hurt they're healing themselves back up to full, Stim Pistol doesn't really help all that much. Same thing goes if teammates are dying basically instantly. Stim Pistol doesn't really do that much because you can't heal them in time. I do find this one maybe the best whenever you have teammates that are rocking like heavy armor, which is usually against like bots, since you tend to take cover a lot more against the bots. In that case, the Stim Pistol can be really good. It's also really fun if you combine it with the double-edged sickle, because that one you light yourself on fire and you can just keep firing it, and then it has the most damage, and it also has heavy armor pen. And if you have somebody standing behind you just shooting you with a Stim Pistol, you pretty much just become like a screaming LMG. That can actually mow down quite a lot of stuff, so it's really fun in that combination. Moving on, we have the SG22 Bushwhacker. This is the sawed-off triple barrel shotgun. This one comes in the Viper Commandos Warbond, and this one is pretty cool. The Bushwhacker, I feel, is a little bit underrated by the community because it does do pretty good damage, and it is pretty consistent against certain enemies. Versus the bugs, I would say this one's probably A tier. Versus bots, I would say this one's probably B tier. And then versus squids, I'd probably also say this one's A tier. The Bushwhacker is really nice for one-shotting quite a lot of things. It's really good at fighting bugs in particular, since this can one-shot pretty much any of the medium bugs, with the exception of like the shrimp-looking ones, the more heavily armored ones. It can one-shot stalkers if you hit them in the face, which is kind of nice. This does the same amount of damage at 405 damage per shot as the Punisher shotgun, which is the second highest damaging shotgun in the game, and hits a lot of really nice break points for putting down enemies, specifically against the bugs. You do only have 3 shots with this, and you can fire this one barrel at a time, or you can volley fire it, fire out all 3. 3-barrel fire can be strong against certain enemies if you want to hit big enemies harder. That's kind of cool. Against the bots, this one's just kind of okay. The Punisher's also just kind of okay against the bots. It's not really the best there. Yes, it can one-shot all the small bots, but that's not a big deal. It can also one-shot the medium bots, but you have to get good spread where their head is kind of small, and sometimes the pellets just go a little bit wide, so you don't always get a consistent one-shot. They do stagger, though. This does have a lot of stagger. It's the same thing as like the Punisher, so if you hit something with this, and it's not a big thing and it doesn't die, it's probably staggered and can't really fight back immediately. And against squids, I find this one actually pretty good too, because this one does kind of bully the overseers fairly well. It works decently well against flesh mobs too, and it can one-shot any of the voteless, so that's good. I find the Bushwhacker pretty fun overall, but you are going to be reloading it fairly often, which can be a little bit annoying. Up next, we have the LAS7 Talon. This is the laser revolver. And this one I would say is probably just S tier against everything. Like, the Talon is really good. This one is a laser revolver that does very high damage. It does 200 damage per shot, so the same as the Senator. This one does have medium armor pen, not the heavy armor pen though, so you can't hurt as many things with it. This one also has a capacity of 7, kind of, if you shoot it in rapid succession. But if you're not shooting it in rapid succession, then it essentially has infinite ammo, which is fantastic. Reload is a little bit slow and you don't get too many overall magazines, but again, if you're not really using this one to run yourself out of ammo quickly, that's not a big deal. So this one is really consistent. It can one-hit a lot of the bugs. It can one-hit a lot of the bots too. You can one-shot any of the medium bots if you hit them in the head with this, so that's really good. I find this one particularly strong if you want to pair it with the ballistic shield against bots, since you can pretty safely just stand there, and so long as there isn't bots firing at you from like the other sides or behind you, you're kind of just free to just sit there and wait until you can actually line up a headshot, or you just keep hitting like the body shots that do damage to them. So it is very strong in that role. You can also head pop the overseers pretty fast too, so like it's really good there, and you can even kill the harvesters with this fairly fast as well. The Talon is just a very strong secondary. You just kind of have to get used to using it so you don't kind of overheat it. Up next we have the P72 Crisper. This is the little pocket flamethrower. This one can be really good too. So the Crisper, I would say, is S tier versus the bugs, C tier versus the bots, and A tier versus the squids. Versus the bugs, this one is really devastating, like pretty much all the fire weapons are, because you can just roast them and almost all the bugs have to get within melee range. The exception being like the new dragon, but most of the secondaries don't work very well against the new dragon either, so maybe not the best choice there. This one does have heavy armor pen on it too, which is kind of cool. That's just sort of how fire works, as it takes away, and you can spray this out on the floor and things can die from that. So this one is really good against the small and the medium bugs, even pretty strong against the heavy bugs. Like, you can roast chargers with this fairly quick too. Against bots, this one is a lot harder of a sale, because you don't usually want to get within kind of melee range. Once again, this isn't as close as melee range, but it is still pretty close overall. And like, you can roast berserkers with this pretty fast, and you can roast the smaller bots pretty quick with it. This can even kill things like Hulks if you really want it to, but it's just a lot more awkward to get in range with this one than it is with quite a few of the other weapons. Like, I'd rather have a lot of the other secondaries versus bots than like the Crisper. It's just, there's so many times where enemies are at kind of a longer range. Now, if you're just peeking around corners and lighting stuff on fire, this one can still be really good. So even against bots, I don't really hate this one. It's just, it's the most awkward against them. Against squids, this one's fantastic. You can melt overseers, you can melt flesh mobs with this really fast too, and you can also melt the voteless really quick. So like, it's got a lot going for it. Not going to be that great against like harvesters, because you don't want to get that close since they'll zap you, and you can't really hit other things like the stingrays. But again, the secondaries, not all of them are really great for fighting those either. So yeah, Crisper's pretty solid all the way around though. I do like this weapon a lot. Up next we got the grenade pistol. This comes in the Democratic Detonation War Bond, and this one is just very solid. It really has been since it came out. It's been one of the best secondaries. For an overall rating, I would say this one's S tier versus the bugs, S tier versus the bots, and probably A tier versus the squids. Mostly because you just don't usually need as many explosives versus the squids to take out their stuff. So that's why I rated it a little bit lower, but even against the squids, this one is still very solid. So this one does 250 ballistic damage on the actual hit, and then 400 damage on the explosion. Does have medium armor pen, holds 1 shot in it with 6 extra. This one's really good though, because you can use it to close up bug tunnels or close up bot factories. You can also use it to blow up illuminate ships too, but again, that's not entirely necessary. I find like grenades are perfectly fine for that, since you're gonna have to knock the shield off anyway. That being said though, again, it's not a bad option for taking there, and it's pretty decent against crowds too. If you want to shoot this at bugs, it usually kills the small bugs and can kill or harm the medium bugs. Same thing kind of goes with bots. Even if they have a shield up, you can just shoot the shield directly with the grenade pistol, and it usually hurts them. May not outright kill them with 1 shot, but it does hurt them. Squids, kind of the same thing. You can shoot the grenade pistol directly at stuff. It's not going to kill flesh mobs, not with 1 shot. You can shoot them repeatedly and it will kill them. And you can kill voteless with this, but it's not always worth it. Then we have the LAS7 Dagger. This is the little laser pistol, and this one is also pretty good. This comes in the Cutting Edge War Bond, and this one, for an overall rating, I would say is probably B tier versus bugs, A tier versus bots, and then B tier versus squids. This one could be argued to S tier against bots though too, because this one is really useful against them. Against the other 2 factions, it's still kind of useful. I just find some other secondaries to be a little bit more useful in my opinion. So this one just works the same way as the scythe, where you just hold it on something and you wait for the laser to kill it. This can also light them on fire, which is fantastic, and this has potentially infinite ammo. There was a bug where it actually did have infinite ammo, but that has been fixed. DPS is quite good from this. This does have 3 total spare magazines, but you may never need those because if you never overheat it, not a big deal. And this one is extremely accurate at very long ranges. Against bugs, this one can be pretty good. I just find it a little bit awkward since bugs can somewhat swarm you. Usually not a huge deal, since I usually use this to kind of initiate a fight or to pick off smaller things at a distance and then swap to whatever my primary is once they get in close, or special weapon depending on what I'm using. Versus bots, this one is really good because you can just so easily hit the weak spots, so you can just hold it on any of the medium bots' head and it just kills them. It's really strong in combination with the ballistic shield as well if you want to just hold it on them. Don't find it as good as the Talon in my opinion, but still, like, the Talon is a pretty high bar anyway. Dagger is pretty decent there. It's also really good on the bot missions because you can zap any of the mines on the ground and then just blow them up and you don't have to worry about them. Same thing kind of goes with the bots too. And against squids, this one's pretty decent as well. You can hold it and burn just about anything. It's okay versus the flesh mobs. It's pretty good against the voteless, and it's okay against the overseers. Against the bigger things, doesn't really do a whole lot, but that's fine. Like, it's overall pretty good secondary. Then we have the GP20 Ultimatum. You could argue this weapon is also one of the best secondaries in the game. This one is a single shot grenade launcher that does a massive amount of damage. So this is 1000 ballistic damage on the impact, and then it's 2000 explosive damage, with it having a lot of demo force. This can close up basically anything. It used to have even more demo force when you could knock out like jammers with it, which made it pretty overpowered on the bot missions, honestly. They did nerf that, so you can't do that anymore. But you can still close up like Titan holes and stuff with it, so that's fantastic. For an overall rating with the Ultimatum, this one's kind of hard to rate because it really depends on the mission that you're going on and how often you're going to be using it, since usually you don't use the Ultimatum all that much. So for that reason, I'm going to say that this one's A tier versus the bugs, S tier versus the bots, and B tier versus the squids. That might be kind of a weird rating, and we'll see how the comments play out with this one. Against the bugs, this one is still really good. You can one-shot chargers, you can one-shot titans with it, you can close up titan holes with it, and you can close up bug tunnels. If I'm going for something to close up bug tunnels, though, I find the grenade pistol to be a little bit more useful in that role, and other than that, I'm probably just going to be using this against chargers or the titan holes. In which case, there's usually not very many titan holes, and usually there's a bunch of chargers, but that's sort of what I'm going to be using this mostly on. Against bots, I find that I use this one a whole lot more often, since there's more big things like tanks, like hulks, stuff that I can knock out immediately with the Ultimatum, so I tend to favor it a little bit more on those missions, and it is very solid on them. And then the squids, I really only use this to like knock out the ships, and that's about it. Like, I don't find myself using this against really anything else. Sometimes flesh mobs, if I want to just delete them with this, sure, that's fine. But, like, usually it's just the ships that I'm using this on. And for the same role, I could take something like Thermite, or, once again, I could take the Grenade Pistol, which, again, I don't think is entirely necessary, since there's usually not a whole lot of Illuminate ships that need to be taken out on missions. That's why I'd rate it a little bit lower. And then our very last secondary weapon is the PLAS15 Loyalist. This is the little plasma pistol. This one is basically the smaller Purifier, which the Purifier is really good, so this one is also really good. I don't see this one taken too often, which is kind of interesting. So this one does 75 damage of ballistic damage and then 75 damage of explosive damage on hit. This one does have medium armor pen too, and you can charge this up. When it's fully charged up, it does 150 ballistic damage, and it also does 225 explosive damage. The explosion also gets bigger thanks to the charge up too, so it's very similar to the Purifier. This one is really solid though. I would say that this one is an A tier across the board against everything. Like, this one is really good. It holds 7 shots in it that you can spam out relatively quick, or you can use it for charged up shots that do a lot of damage. If you're just using this for charged up shots, it one-shots a lot of stuff. Both the medium and the small things can die really fast with this. Even big things you can kill fairly quick with the Loyalist. And it works really well against all of them. Like, against bugs, you can usually hit quite a few bugs since they're kind of grouped up together most of the time. That's really good. You do have to worry if the bugs are a little bit too close with this one, though, because it can splash damage back to you. But, you know, just don't use it at very close range and you should be fine. Or just use the spam shots at close range where the explosive doesn't really matter. Against bots, this one's really good, especially if the enemies want to be putting up shields and you're at kind of a weird angle, because you can just aim directly at the shield and usually hit that and then splash the damage through that and also to the other bots near it, so you can kill them pretty quick. And against squids, this is pretty good too. You can usually splash this to a couple vote lists, works really well against the overseers, and it can work pretty well against the flesh mobs too. So like the loyalist is very solid. And that's where I put all the secondary weapons in Helldivers 2 versus all of the factions. Tell me your thoughts on these. Where would you put these weapons? Which secondary weapons are your favorite? I'm going to be doing this with primary weapons too. That'll take a little bit longer because there's more primary weapons to talk about, as well as we'll do it with special weapons as well. And like I still got to go over turrets and some other things too in Helldivers. Either way though, thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye everybody.